exception, Blacklisted Podcast.
All right, what is going on, guys? We are here with another outdoor podcast. We got a cold front coming in Georgia this week, so
It feels amazing.
Yeah, I was about to say the only person that actually likes this is Dan.
Yeah, goddamn
As
right.
you can tell by his stupid ass Christmas sweater.
Well, the beard's gone, so I gotta
Do something.
Yep.
So we're just trying to give a shout out to everyone in our network before we started. Training Box, where we're home based out of. They do a great job with personal training, group classes. So if you guys are in the Roswell or Alpharetta area, look them up. Repair, Perform, Recover. They are one of our PTs that we work pretty closely with. Lauren and crew does a great job getting our athletes healthy and keeping them healthy. Hybrid Spine and Sport. Peter's a chiropractor. He's got a couple other people on staff now. I think a massage therapist is one of them, and then I think another chiropractor he just hired on. So he's got a couple people over there. Great at seeing movement, helping you improve movement patterns. Great Group Tactical. If you guys are looking for a great weight vest, it is form fitting. Nothing like it out on the market right now. So make sure you check them out. And then Zero FG, a great energy drink company. They don't give any fucks.
damn
True.
straight. There's a lot to that, actually. That's funny.
Yeah.
Good morning, gentlemen. How are you?
Dan, what are we talking about today?
Well, today we're starting our first episode in our leadership and positive psychology series. Once a month, right? We're doing this. Okay. So we're kicking it off essentially with talking about the success of an athlete, coach, or self-sufficient? ?
So whether an athlete does better with a coach or by themselves?
Correct. With an additional piece of how can the guidance be appropriate or inappropriate, and we're going to discuss like some different viewpoints there.
Okay.
We're going to be talking about a lot about, for everyone, we're going to be talking a lot about our perspectives on those topics, or like it's that one topic in those categories. Does that make sense?
I hope so. Does to me.
That's fair enough. So I wanted to kick off this morning. It's so weird being this far back. I wanted to kick off this morning with discussing like our perceptions on what is considered like the individual athlete, and most specifically with the question of like, how do we define the individual athlete, especially when looping in when they have responsibilities in a team sport.
Yeah.
So we'll start with individual athlete. What is it? Griffin.
He just looked at me like, "What is it? What is it? It's a thing." No, I mean, on it. Well, my perspective is every athlete is an individual athlete in some shape or form, whether you play team sports or not, because you have to hold yourself accountable anyway. I think it's more so how you approach. There's two different like sides of it. Thinking about the team and yourself. If you can't hold yourself accountable, you can't do your own stuff properly, you cannot help the team. Okay. But again, doing it individually, you're doing it for the team. So it's, I think it's pretty simple. Like every athlete is an individual athlete. You just have to have a mindset of, are you working towards a common goal with others or you're just yourself?
Yeah.
I like that last statement, honestly.
Yeah, that's what I was going to kind of hit on was every athlete like has their own responsibilities on a team. It's whether you have more of a team oriented mindset and you're playing team sports, or you're more of an individual, kind of like a lone wolf per se, that goes and does like, you know, a track sport or some sort of usually performance based sport is more of an individual endeavor.
I got you.
Or skill sport with like snowboarding and skiing and stuff like
Oh,
that.
yeah.
Yeah. So that's an interesting concept to bring up, like the skiing and snowboarding piece, because if you think about the Olympics, yes, it's like it's an individual thing,
Mm-hmm.
right? But are you out there for yourself, or are you out there for America or whatever country you're performing for?
Yeah. I would say, I guess like getting a little political, like nationalism is on the rise again, but I think over maybe the last 2 decades, it's been more of a individual bias towards training.
All right, past couple of
towards competing.
All right, so past couple of decades, sure. So let's how about this? Let's turn the pages back a little bit to like pre-COVID versus now. Same question.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's swinging a little bit more towards competing for your country again. Inside of America, I think there's that in a lot of other other countries around the world. But I still think if you're doing some sort of like, winter Olympics with like tricking for snowboarding or whatever it might be, you're still doing it from an individual based, like you're doing it for more for you than you are for a country, if that makes sense.
No, that makes complete sense. Like I look at individual athlete, especially like an individual athlete trying to be successful in their own sport, because when you look at when you look at athletes sponsored by God knows what, I'll just use a swimming world. Michael Phelps being sponsored by like cornflakes or goggles or whatever. Like that's him, not America. Like America doesn't go and swim fucking 40 hours a week
Right.
and eat 10,000 calories a day.
Right.
Like that's him, the individual. You have
Right.
to drive through. Sorry, you have to drive individually in your car.
Mm-hmm.
You can't have a bunch of hands on the wheel unless they're trying to help steer you straight. Now, or well, in whatever direction you're going. Now, I'm going to be devil's advocate here a little bit. So I grew up technically in team sports, swimming and baseball. Swimming is individually performed metrics, right? But at the end of the dual meet, if you will, there's a set of races you do, similar to a grid match. There's a set of races that you do. Your individual performance gains you so many points, track and field as well. And by the end of it, it has team A, team B scores. People look at the score, they don't give a flying fuck about your individual performance. But that's the only thing that I'll speak anecdotally. That's all I was focused on.
Yeah.
I didn't give a shit if my team won or lost. At the end of it, I gave a shit if I won, if my performance was good. And same like in baseball, I was our starting pitcher for 4 years.
Yeah.
I cared how many strikeouts I had. I cared how many people got hits off of me. And if I did well but we still lost, I was happy.
Yeah.
So am I a good individual athlete or a bad one?
So I think in regards to baseball, you're playing your individual game, right?
Yeah.
And you have to play your individual game well. So I think it's still baseball is an interesting one, and you kind of have layers to sports, right? There's much more team-oriented ones like basketball and football, and then there's much more individual-based ones where like baseball technically is an individual sport, but in order to play it, you need 9 individuals competing at the same time. Because you're just going up there and doing your job. There's not a lot outside of like turning a double play or triple play, whatever, or relaying a baseball into the infield. There's not a lot of team components to the sport. You're not doing a lot to help each other out outside, or giving like a batter information or like catcher pitcher. So there is some team component to baseball. But again, it's like layers that you have for team sports, and they can get more complex or they can get less complex. And I think the least complexity that you have is like the swimming aspect, where it's like you're just going to go do your individual shit, and then at the end of the weekend your scores just add up to wherever you're going to be ranked on the team. Outside of doing like, what is it, the relays?
Yeah, but that's still very individually.
It's still individual based, but there is some team, like
because
more team component.
I can confidently tell you there were times in my swimming career, club, high school, even in college, like I was on the relay for me, and if I didn't feel good, I was just gonna fuck it up.
Yeah.
Like I was one of those assholes. I was not a good team player at all. But you put me out there by myself, I would perform. I would actually want to perform.
Yeah.
But
because part of that I think too is like you have control over what your performance is, right?
Yeah.
You don't have control over what everyone else's performance is. So like in the team side of things, you were like, well, I could not have a great match because these motherfuckers aren't going to do well on their shit. And so it's like out of your hands. So it becomes less of an individual based sport at that point in time.
Makes sense. I got you. Now I want to turn that towards football for a second. One, because I want to get your perspectives on like everything we just said. But prior to that, Nick Gonnett, the kid, the 19-year-old that was on the team, he said something that caught my attention about football specifically, and how he would approach it. Like Nick's a pretty individual athlete, right? Very, I won't say like egocentric at all, but his approach was, I'm going to go out there and do my best. And if someone else, like if my team wasn't doing their jobs, I was taking their job and putting it on my back and doing it better than them because I had to. Otherwise, we wouldn't do well. So it's like an individual but team mind to me anyway. So like with all of that said, I want to loop this to football, specifically like high level football where you were at.
It's the same thing. Like you'll hear every coach talk to an athlete and just tell them to do their job. It's really simple. Do your damn job. Okay. So like as an individual, your responsibility is to do your fucking job. Okay. Outside of that, where leadership becomes part of a team aspect, you don't have to have leadership as an individual. On a team, you do.
Mm-hmm.
So now this is where it adjusts is like, okay, I can be an individual, but I can also be something more, and I can be a leader on a team. And that sometimes is sacrificing yourself to do more for others or doing less and letting someone else take over too. It's just someone that has to, they have to take a step forward of owning more responsibility than just themselves.
I like that. Can you say that again for the crowd? I'm serious.
They can just record 10
Oh,
seconds.
yeah, they can just rewind it. Yeah, that's true.
And listen to it again.
Continue.
So honestly, like from that side of things in sports, like that's also how I've approached every sport I've ever done. That one reason I don't like individual of CrossFit is because I don't get that opportunity. There's no opportunity for that. Right. So then it makes me actually become less. It doesn't become less of an individual in the sense of like, I'm still going to show up and do my job and do what I'm supposed to do, but I don't have as much meaning behind it or passion behind it.
Okay.
Right. And that passion is what drives me to be better,
Mm-hmm.
to be my best self.
The passion from leadership on a team.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying? Yeah.
Now, I want to go forward with that a little bit. I'm going to throw in a little bit of an audible here in our discussion. I like what you just said there a lot, honestly. So you had a really, from our past discussions, if I may put you on the spot here, you've shared with me that you had a decently tough time transitioning from like football into the CrossFit Light, right? But you started in the CrossFit World on a team, correct?
Mhm.
And then that shifted to the individual focus.
Mhm.
Okay. Now, without going into full detail of like trials and tribulations there, walk through the sequence of what was going through your mind and build that into when you became individually focused,
Okay.
the peaks and valleys
Okay.
to a certain point when it started getting a little better.
All right. I will say when I'm done with this, it needs to wrap into the coaching aspect of this stuff because this is where this will.
That's
this
what
is
I
where
wanted to
this
go
is gonna
to.
go
Yep.
anyway.
Yep.
So I went obviously from sports. You have coaches. You always have coaches, and those coaches are the ones that help develop and nourish those side like that mentality of what you need to be as a team athlete, right? So I through college, like I had good coaches. I had really bad coaches that are absolute idiots, and I would tell them to their face. And football, dog eat dog world, man. Like you suck. Like it's very clear. A 18-year-old shouldn't be a better coach than you at 18.
I've come to appreciate that mentality, by the way.
Yeah. Well, but it's taught me a lot of things. Okay. So then going from having good, like I said, plenty of great coaches I've had and things to learn from, but then moving into CrossFit, like I always felt a lot of times I was on a team where I didn't have people that had the same leadership or responsibilities that they wanted to take over. And you on a team, you need more. You need more than just one. Okay, there's vocal, there's lead by example. I've always been a lead by example kind of person. I never wanted to be the vocal person because it's always me, whatever. I don't give a fuck about that. Let me just do my fucking job. And then I'll take other people's job and show them, hey, like, step the fuck up. But I've learned I've had to be more vocal over years, and I still just don't choose to be the vocal guy. And that kind of led me into, like, realizing maybe I am an individual athlete. Maybe I need to be one. And so I started CrossFit, and like you start out and you're like not really knowing much about it. And I realized to get to be an individual at the games, the best chance to start was on a team. Right. So we started there. And we didn't really have a coach. Like I was 2016 was my first year, then 2017 on a team, and then 18 again on a team. And it really didn't have like a coach like all teams. Right. But you had a team of athletes that kind of coached each other, and you still have to be a good individual athlete from that. And again, same kind of idea. We left the games when we made it in 2017. I think everyone, like we got there and they're all kind of like, not everyone, but think Mitchell. I'll talk. I'll say Mitchell. Mitchell got there and like he's super happy to be there, but he also got like shell shocked. You know?
Oh, really?
Yeah. And Katie did too. Corinne had been there a few times, so she wasn't. She's used to it. You know, like. But it really became about this is to be a fun experience and to do your best, but also be fun. And I'm like here, fucking like, I'm here to go to war. Like that's just all I know.
So you had fun, shell shocked. What was the other one before you?
Just comfortable to be
Comfortable.
Yeah.
War.
Yeah.
Those are 4 very unique like mindsets going into something like the games.
Right.
Continue.
And I think that happens to a lot of people. They want to get there, and it's a massive goal, right? So like when you have this huge goal of something and you get there, it's almost like you let off the gas.
It's tough with CrossFit too, because like you don't know if you're going.
Yeah.
So like when you get there, sometimes it can be a little bit of a surprise. And I think teams are like, oh, we just got there, like yay, like let's go enjoy ourselves, have fun. And they don't set expectations going into the games.
Right.
All right.
And,
so
like,
not lack of setting expectations associated with team. Okay.
Yeah.
All
Right. And like I would also say like in a review of like performance, not effort. Like my teammates did a great job of giving great effort across the board. At no point was anybody a soft ass bitch. I will 100% say that. But the execution of semifinals versus the games was entirely different.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody was on, lights out, because like you had to give everything you had to get to the games. But then again, like that goal, like, oh, we made it, and kind of like then all of those mentalities kind of
Was that the
showed.
year that you pulled them down the floor? With
Yes.
The worm?
Yeah. So like,
that's the war mentality going.
right. It was
going
the
to
war
forefront.
mentality, and that was again, it's a perfect example of we went into that event all weekend. We're sitting in like first, second, or third, like qualifying positions, and then going to our final event, we're 1 spot out. We were 3 points out. TTT was in the 5th spot. We were in the 6th spot or whatever it was, and we had to jump them. We go into the event. I'm not the best at handstand push-ups, or I wasn't at the time. I was the worst of us 4, and I ended up doing the most. Just because like the judge was really actually giving us a really rough time that shouldn't have, and like other people were not doing good reps clearly with their butt on the wall and stuff. Whatever, doesn't matter. We fell super far behind, and in my head when I looked at them, I was like, I'm not fucking losing. I had a goal. I don't give a fuck. We're gonna find a way to catch somebody, and it's gonna work out. It's gonna happen. In their brain, they're like, we're fucked. So, and I knew that. I could see that. I was like, when we went to the worm, I was like, you were going to pick it up, and we are not fucking stopping. I will pull you down this floor. And we did, and it put everybody else on fucking ice, and they freaked out. TTT dropped the worm. Everybody panicked, and they blew up, and we made it. But that opportunity is something that's been ingrained in me, is like, my job was just to go pick up the worm and lunge, just like everybody else. But it's somebody's responsibility, if you want to go make that goal, to take on everyone else's responsibility of passion, motivation, whatever it is, to get them to fucking go.
So you took the role of the coach of the team in that moment.
Well, I mean, I just be a leader.
It could be.
It was leadership.
Okay, so it could be argued then that way, because the coach is meant to be a leadership.
Well,
type,
I think
right?
what you're trying to get at, Dan, is there's
Am I jumping too far.
There's athletes as leaders, and then there's coaches as leaders.
Right.
Got it,
And
okay.
the coach is more the overseer in the big picture, and again, relating back to basketball, I go back to basketball because I think it's the most team and individual oriented sport that there is. And if you look at Timberwolves now, bias, but Ant is coming to be the leader of the Timberwolves right now. And
Right.
so if you go watch Starting Five on Netflix, you can see him being very vocal, leading by example, in the weight room every day, doing all the things that Kobe and Jordan would do, right?
All right.
But then he has, just like Kobe and Jordan, with Phil Jackson, he's got his coach, Chris Finch, that helps him be that leader.
Right.
Okay. All right. Well, so let's circle it back to that. Honestly, keep that noted, because that's going to be a really good point for later. But yeah. So
right,
continue.
is we go through that. We have all that, right, and then they all retire. Corinne wants to have kids, have a family. Duh, got that, right?
Of course, yeah, sure.
Mitchell wants to get a big boy job, and
He got one.
right. And, and I was like, I'm not fucking done. And I also realized how much fire I had to seek out still what I wanted to do. And everyone especially going to the games wants to win the games, especially as an athlete, you want to be.
Of course. Yeah,
Now with this sport, with any sport, but especially this sport, you have to have everything set up properly. One thing is having the right coach, the right environment, the team, which we talked about our last podcast.
Mhm.
So not really fully understanding that as an athlete that just wants to do everything possible to get there. I did everything I could with what I had, and chose to follow that route of being an individual athlete, right? What I realized through all of that, like the next few years of training, is I'm not my best self as an individual,
Continue.
both without teammates and without a coach.
Can you give specifics on that? Honestly, like 'cause that degree of introspect is pretty unique. I would argue, but that's also a mindset. I'm sorry, that's also an attribute required to be elite.
Yeah, well, so I mean, like part of it, like I've always been a good coach because I had great coaches that helped me coach, but I also coached other people because I understood things so well. So I've always coached like and taught people things along the way. And obviously with CrossFit, I coached myself through this to go to the games, programming, all of it.
You were your own coach when you made the games in 2020.
Correct. I
Wow.
was from 2018 because essentially, like again, as a team, I'll say like we didn't have a coach, but we had a coach. We were each other's coaches, right? But from 2018 until last year, I had been my own coach, and tried to figure it out along the way. Granted, I had a lot of background between strength and conditioning and like anatomy of body and how to program and all these other things, right? Just learning to program CrossFit was a little bit different, but not that hard. And ultimately, like I realized it's a lot of jobs to put on yourself, right? And on top of that, the passion of not being there to fight for others versus fighting for myself didn't mean as much, especially once I was able to accomplish the goal that I had set out.
I
At
like
least
that.
one of the big ones, not the biggest one, but one of the big ones, right? And it kind of it showed me like I don't care as much as I would have if this has been a like team mentality, team goal. I still would have attacked it the same way, but I would have had more passion and like reasoning behind a lot of those things. And I think even as a coach, like even as in the individual area, even if I had a coach the whole time, it still wouldn't have been a full potential reaching thing for me. It would have made one big step forward because now it's still it's a team aspect. It's between the coach and I to accomplish a goal. But I also need the team athletes around me, right? So kind of leading back into all of this is that like even if you're an individual athlete, so I always said like everyone is an individual athlete. Everyone is also a team athlete, and the team could be just you and your coach, or you and your family, or you and whoever's involved, or you and your physical therapist, or your psychologist, or whatever you like have, right? It's still a team thing. Difference is it's all on you when you're out on the floor, right? But I never had that team stuff anymore. It was just me, right? And I realized I was like, I just don't enjoy doing this, but I'm a competitor and a warrior and a guy that just wants to fucking be the best at what they do all the time. So I didn't stop, right? But at a certain point, I was like, if I'm going to keep doing this, I'm wasting my potential in a sense of I'm not reaching my best potential, and now I'm wasting time. So I need to find that, right? So that's kind of where I like started learning and found out like this is what I needed to go to and find a team for things.
Wow. Yeah. I say wow because a lot just hit me there with that whole sequence because I would label you as an extreme outlier to be able to identify everything you just said.
I wish that wasn't the case.
Well, I mean, from the standpoint of like I'm going to say this without empirical backing right now, but I'm going to use the word most loosely. Most athletes, most people would not be able to have that degree of introspect. They would give up early. They would be clouded by where they think they are if they were individually minded, if you will, like more so than what's appropriate to be deemed a successful athlete. Because I would argue your athletic career has been quite successful overall.
Depending on which perspective, yeah.
Right. So I mean, you coached. You're an outlier because you coached yourself from 2018 until like last year,
2022.
2 years ago. Yeah, I would say that correct me if I'm wrong, I would say that I was one of your first coaches, but only for swimming specifically.
And it was super helpful.
Right. Well, I'm not.
stupid helpful.
Yeah.
Stupid helpful.
Well, I'm not trying to like throw myself.
Honestly, that could have been a moment in my life. I was like, "What the fuck am I doing?"
So I guess like that I'm not trying to like put myself out there, right? That's just making a direct statement of what happened, or what is, or what was. How do you guys feel when I say the piece I just did? Like it takes a special mindset, and a mindset. The person has to be able to understand a baseline of sports psychology or psychology in general.
I think you just need to be introspective.
Yeah.
Okay, that's difficult.
To make it simple.
That's difficult to be.
Yeah,
As
but
an
I think
athlete,
that
right?
yeah, it is, but I think that's a big leadership trait as well.
True. So who, without, and we can be as nice as possible, but I think we just need to say it directly. What individuals in, I guess, the three of our history of coaching have the most difficulty with having any type of self-reflection? To be able to say all the shit. I think when people hear that, they're going to shit their pants. Honestly, 'cause to you, it's normal life.
Because it should be.
Because it should be. But like to most in society, I mean, social media is the biggest fucking problem on this planet.
Well,
Well, maybe not the biggest problem on this planet, but it's an issue that people think they matter because of social media.
It's just how important is it to you? Like,
Right.
Yeah.
Military wise, like, dude, if you don't fucking do your job and then you're not taking care of everybody else around you.
Mhm.
But how many people actually, from an athlete standpoint, we'll stick with just the athletic world, not in general life.
I
That's
think-
where it
well,
comes from.
yeah.
yeah,
It's
so-
life.
So how do people develop that? Why is that development
Well,
not?
Well, like I think we
around
talked
anymore?
about this on one of our other podcasts, but
Okay.
like playing team sports growing up will weed the individuals out that don't have that mindset.
Yeah,
and
it's
so
perfect. Yep.
you eventually get that. You'll have more selfish behavior and more selfish thought process, less introspective, and focusing on what others are doing in a team perspective in sports like CrossFit, Grid, which are still at an amateur level.
Mhm.
And I think even at some of the semi-professional levels, you'll have more ego-oriented individuals on teams, right?
Dodgeball.
Yeah, for sure. So I don't know if that's what you're trying to get at.
No,
Your question,
it
or-
was. I knew the answer, right? And that's what I was trying to get at because I feel I was rewatching some of our podcast episodes and we said that a lot. You guys said
Mhm.
that a lot, and I want it to be repeated as much as possible for episodes like this.
Yeah, and I mean, like, it's also just like looking at being a better person. Like back when I started CrossFit 12 years ago now, 12 or 13 years ago, and like the whole concept of starting it was for exercise purposes because you were trying to better yourself as a person. And then through that, you kind of like start to learn, you surround yourself more with people who are also trying to better themselves. And this is at the very beginning of CrossFit. I
Right,
haven't been
right,
in a
right.
gym in a while, so I don't know what populations are like, but like it was a lot of people just trying to find out how to better themselves.
Mhm.
And so I think you kind of just naturally grew into this like introspective person and introspective and like just figuring out, probably because you gravitated towards it in the first place, but then two, you surrounded yourself with a bunch of people that were like that. And so you started to kind of that started to be your lifestyle, is how do I better myself each and every day?
There you go. That is one of the best questions as a human in general, but also as an athlete, has to be at the forefront for any sport.
If you want to be,
If you want
Great at
to be
it.
successful at it. Now, can an athlete do that alone? You could. I would say.
Again, what are you defining success? I didn't win the games. Maybe
All
I
right, fair
can-
enough.
there's-
Like,
there's-
success is very subjective.
well,
right?
there's a ceiling you can get to by doing it by yourself.
What is that ceiling, Kyle?
It depends.
There
Probably,
you-
what I-
how about-
probably about what I did.
Yeah.
All right, so for you, it's about in simplest terms, what's the bell curve of about what you did? What's
I
the
think
ceiling there?
you're trying to define something right now that's not really definable. Like,
All right, that's fair. That's completely fair. Some people, like, I agree fully. This is I'm playing devil's advocate
Yeah.
at the moment.
Yeah.
I agree fully, and people just need to hear that.
Yeah. I mean, you're trying to define something right now that's like isn't really definable, and like you don't know unless you've lived that reality. And like you probably say that Griffin did achieve his ceiling as the individual athlete and the success that he had. It wasn't necessarily what he wanted. Could he have gotten to his goal if he had a coach? There's a strong possibility that is the case. But sometimes it just doesn't work out like that. And like to bring it back to basketball again, like would Jordan have become the athlete that he was without Phil Jackson as his coach? Probably not, because there's a 10-year history of him not succeeding by his standards in the NBA until, I mean, the first half was, I think his first two were like somebody else, but like until they found essentially the right coach and the right supporting cast around him.
Correct. You have to, and that's kind of like earlier like what I was saying. Like you have to have that. Everyone's an individual athlete, but everyone's also a team athlete.
Mm-hmm.
Michael Jordan was on a team, but he was an individual athlete.
Yep.
And
then
one of the best ones ever.
Yep.
Right. But he had to have the cast and the environment and the people around him. Dude, Michael Jordan was nobody without Scottie Pippen.
Yeah.
That's true. What's the documentary on Netflix right now?
Starting Five.
Is that the one with Michael Jordan?
No, you're thinking of The Last Dance.
Yeah, dude. They said that almost verbatim.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like, I didn't know that personally, and I was honestly, I'm from Indiana, and I was a Chicago Bulls fan,
Mm-hmm.
even when they played the Pacers and whatever the hell, and it was because of stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But you also see that now with like, again, football, like the best players of all time. Tom Brady he's nobody without Bill Belichick. I don't give a fuck what anybody has to fucking say. He's not. He's also nobody without fucking Gronkowski.
Or
Yeah.
his offensive lines.
Right.
Yep.
But like you have like there's these big major points you have to have with you, especially on a team, and then you have to have all this other environmental success from
Mhm.
these other people doing their job.
And how is if you're an individually minded athlete,
The
On
right
a
environment
team.
of training partners. Everyone does need them. You don't need them every day. You don't need them, but you need at some point you have to have that. You've got to have someone else taking on a lot of the other jobs that you don't need to be taking on. And so
Mhm.
essentially, your coach,
Mhm.
whether it's programming, again, you can work together on this
Yeah.
the situation. But like a massage therapist, like you
Mhm.
need someone to sit there and work on your body. You can't do it by yourself.
Yeah. I think for the sport of CrossFit, one of the biggest benefits of having a coach is having a coach in the warm-up area. Because
Yep.
and this is something that I've thought for a long time. You just don't get to coach the sport a lot. So you do a lot of training, but you don't get to coach the sport a lot. But I really think that a workout can be majority of the time is won or lost in the warm-up area and how that athlete enters the competition floor. And as a coach, that's really the only thing you have some sway over with the athlete, is whether their mindset is ready to go when you approach the competition floor or when they go out to the competition floor. They do have some responsibility in that, but you can help to influence that greatly. And to give an example of this, like Amanda in 2023, there's a little bit of an art form to this, and you kind of have to feel the energy that's going on in the room. But every time before she went out to the floor in the corral, I would just pull up a quote or write something down on my phone, and I'd give it to her, and she'd read it, and you could see that her face she read it, she was focused, and then she went out and she fucking crushed it. So, there's little things, little techniques, whatever it might be. And I think that in this sport, that's one of the biggest components of it. If you're somebody that's driven and will do the work, the coach in the back area or the warm-up area is like so influential in the sport.
I just pictured there's a slow motion little video clip that went around years ago of Sarah Sigmundsdottir.
Mm-hmm.
She was smiling and whatnot to
Yeah.
somebody in the crowd, and then she just went into like remarkable bitch face mode, which was like her hyper focus.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's what I pictured when you just said that with Amanda.
Yeah, I mean, it was a little bit of that. Like,
Yeah.
she was still focused, but you could see like that was like the thing that she needed to be like, okay, it's fucking game time.
Fucking love that. John Chen does the same thing.
Yeah.
Like it's remarkable.
Yeah.
So
But I'll take
Go
to
ahead.
flip
Yeah.
it back a little bit more. Like in John's case, John needs somebody in training. He
okay.
needs somebody there to help him out in training and like set his mind right outside of the competition floor. He's a pretty good competitor, and he can set
Yes.
his head on straight for when he goes out to the
Yeah.
Like at beach ball, he was on an RX team, which was a little bit above his ability level, but we wanted to test him. And he had the 70-pound dumbbell, which is heavy for him. And he went touch and go for like 10 reps, and Dylan was the one that had to set it down versus John. And like that surprised me even.
That boy's John's really
Yeah.
fucking impressive.
But sorry if this is a little bit too much information, John, but like yesterday or Monday, I came into the gym and he had tested the Fittest of the Coast workout, had Alpha Fit camp where he was like learning how to become a lifetime fitness instructor. And then he came where they did like 3 workouts over the course of the weekend, all day thing, coaching, teaching, learning, etc. And he came in Monday night, and he already had texted me that day and was like, I don't know if my head's really in this. I'm leaving for Taiwan in a week and a half. Like, I don't even know if I'm going to be able to do the qualifiers, etc. And I texted him, was basically like, look, like, you make a decision on this. Either you do it or you don't. There's no half-assing this qualifier. It's a super tough qualifier this year. So, like, you need to figure it out and make your decision. He texted me a couple hours later, like, just woke up from a nap, should be good to go. Like, I'm going to go test it. And he got in the gym. I started judging him, and he basically stopped in the round of 10. And we had a conversation. I'm like, around the same things that we just had, and you could see it brought him a ton of relief, and now he's going to, like, more than likely have some good training leading up into the Open this year, which is his ultimate goal.
Hell yeah.
But he needed somebody to just be the bigger picture in that, and like, look, man, like, you just had this weekend, you can't give this 100%. You were also, like, invested in grid, like how the grid matches went this weekend. And like, you're going to Taiwan where you're like going to see family for two weeks during the middle of this qualifier, and you don't even know if you can compete there because of volleyball this year. So like, either you need to go step away for 20 minutes, refocus, come back and hit this workout, or you just need to call it. And like, you can see that helped him like think through the thought process and just chill and relax.
I love that, because that honestly, this whole piece that we just discussed, we hit on a good bit of it, but the quote that I sent you guys that I wanted us to discuss today, so it's similar to if you are your own lawyer, you have a fool for a client, right? It's this quote that I'm aware of was by Doc Councilman, who is the Indiana University swim coach from 1958 to 1990. He coached in 3 Olympics, and he swam the English. He was the oldest person to cross the English Channel in the 70s. And anyway, he says, if you coach yourself, you have a fool for a coach.
Yeah.
I want to talk about that statement. We hit on it quite a bit, but let's get really fucking specific. What are your guys' immediate thoughts on that?
I mean, I think it's true. Like, well, to some extent, like,
good. Yes. No,
I think
good.
you can go pretty far, right? And you can have a pretty big knowledge base, and you can,
who are you talking about?
I mean, no one specific. Like,
Talking about
I mean, look, there's tons of athletes that do it in the sport.
Of course,
right?
No, of course,
like,
there are.
You see them. I wouldn't like in today's day and age, they aren't necessarily on the top of the podium, but they're at the games. Like, there's a lot of them that are at the games.
Who are a
doing
couple off the top of your head?
Honestly, I don't even know who's at the games.
Fair
this
enough.
year.
All right, then continue.
But and it's more so people that are in, like, not that they're nobodies, but it's like, 15th through 30th place are probably individuals that don't have a coach or are following like a group program or something like that.
I would. Well, so yes, so honestly, I agree. I completely agree with this statement. I do. And I'll even give back information, just because we talked about one side of what I was saying is that I coached myself, and I had a lot of the knowledge. I had a lot of the things that I needed to do it. Here's the other side of it, though, that I don't talk about. After I did make the games, I went out and asked coaches to coach me. I asked for managers. I asked for people to help me, and they all turned me down.
Why? Honestly, why?
I don't know.
Blacklisted.
I don't know.
Because you were an exception?
Dude, I don't know. I asked. I'm not gonna name names of coaches I asked. I'm not like, but here's the other side of it. I also saw coaches. I had an experience when I did have a coach for like a month when I started CrossFit. Not a great experience anyway. We went past it, and then I looked around the space, and I was like, these people don't know how to coach. These programs, not everybody, again, like, this is just a blanket statement, right? There are great coaches in this sport. Clearly, there's a couple female coaches that are phenomenal, actually, that they don't get enough credit. But there are more coaches in this sport that don't know what the fuck they're doing than there are that know what they're doing, because they just made it up and said, I knew.
Sounds like an extra podcast episode.
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe. But that's what I looked around, and I just didn't see, like, so I asked the ones that I thought, and they said no. And they're like, some, obviously, there's going to be people that legitimately are like, I don't have time because I'm focused on the athletes that I do have, and I want to give them my best effort. The thing is, I read into that 2 ways. 1, I respect that. 2, you don't see enough in me, because then if you did, I would be the guy that's winning.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's the case, then why wouldn't you take that athlete?
Mm-hmm.
So how did that impact you overall, I guess? Maybe that's the question I want to ask.
It just kept forcing to me, like, doing what I'm doing is the right decision and right
guess-
thing for right now.
Better question is how did you adapt? Give me like 2 specifics on how you adapted to that. Other than maintaining a course of like, well, I guess got to be self-sufficient here.
I looked for people to train with, so I at least could eliminate that one thing that I was missing. And I had off and on, I had random people for a small amount of time, which was super, super beneficial for me. People that were better than me. And I also, if someone's better than me in the room, you can fucking bet I'm going to catch up to them. But I need that in the room. I do. I'm okay with not being the best. I don't want to be the best in there, but I will be at some point. So that was helpful. And then 2, like, I started studying more things to help me as a coach to myself. Granted, then it eliminates the amount of time I have for recovery or other things that I needed to do. But those are like things that I don't talk about. Like in those, but in that, like, to reframe back to what the quote is, like, you may not be an actual fool because it's a metaphor,
Of course.
right? But you are lowering your ceiling of what your capability
Yes,
is.
there we go. Yeah.
You need help. Everybody on this planet needs help. And once you understand that, and then not just understand it, find the right people to help you, then you've set yourself up for success.
So how would you guys all right, put a label of degree of truth on that statement. Okay, I would argue that you're an outlier with someone that had to coach themselves, and you ended up. I know your definition of success is to win the games, right?
Well, no, I
But
had success.
But would you necessarily call him an outlier though? Because like there's other people that are at the games doing that too.
That's a good point.
And
All
like
right, then how about that?
even if you go back to
right now, are there right now?
I don't know every individual that's at the games, but I would assume so. And they're probably getting some help, but it's not like, again,
Right.
it's not coaching.
Okay, that's fair. So
Right.
then maybe there aren't outliers here, depending on where how we label
I think the only ones you could potentially look at as outliers are Froning, maybe Briggs at the time.
Why would Froning be an outlier?
Frazier. I don't know. Froning had a lot of training partners, but for the most part, it seems like he coached himself. He had some help in regards to like, I know he had a back issue after the 2010 games that
when he fell from 15 feet.
yeah, that Kelly Starrett helped him.
I
But
think when he first started, he didn't. And
Yeah.
he had a ton of help immediately.
yes,
So
yeah.
hold on. We said earlier that, and I'm playing devil's advocate with this, but this is important. We said earlier you can't massage therapy yourself. You can't nutrition yourself.
I mean, you can
Well, okay, so
effectively.
there we go. So did Froning have that during his stint of 4 wins?
like therapy and stuff. Or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So would you then argue that he did have a coach to a degree? He didn't. Like, did he decide that, okay, I need to go get a massage therapy coach? I know it's a bit of an extreme, right? But
yeah.
if we're gonna,
I think Griff made a point about like even if you're an individual athlete, you're still on a team. Like you still have a team. Like Rich still
Family.
had a team. Like I think Darren was doing a lot of stuff to grow his business. His wife
Okay.
took care of a lot of things. Like
Wife was helping him
yeah.
a lot.
so, like he still had a team, but I think from all intensive like quote unquote coaching purposes, he did it by himself.
all right, so
From
then
like a programming
Yeah.
mindset.
okay,
100%.
so then we need to make that very clear and defined on our end
Yeah.
as like what a coach is, and then this would be a perfect fucking segue into the final sequence of this whole chat. Define a coach in that regard right now, please.
I mean, it's somebody that knows the sport deeply, maybe and probably competed at the sport at a pretty high level at this point in time, or at some capacity. I don't think you don't necessarily need that, but they can see the sport well. And then
I would say there's exceptions to that.
yeah,
That can be great coaches.
yeah,
But the majority actually do need to do this.
yeah, because you need to understand what athletes are going through mentally and physically to be able to help them along their journey. And it's so I would look at it. It's almost more of like a guide than it is a coach.
Fucking perfect. The guide is in my opinion, the guide is the best possible term for what a coach at a higher level is, or
Mhm.
what even someone trying to get to the higher level. How about this? Above intermediate athlete.
Yeah.
Like the coach is the guide, right? Like, I would argue that my position on the grid, as coach of the grid team, is more of a guide and strategic planner, executor,
Mhm.
more so than because it's really difficult for me to coach coaches,
Mm-hmm.
especially when they all of them at one point, minus a couple, were elite level athletes in some capacity,
Mm-hmm.
where I was not. I was not an elite level swimmer. I was
Yeah.
not an elite level grid athlete either. Sure as fuck wasn't an elite level baseball player. But in your opinion, since you're on the team, there's an element brought there that is slightly different than what you guys would have right when a match starts. Yes or no?
Mhm.
All right. So, from the guidance standpoint, the very beginning of an athlete wanting to become like, they've hit their cap, if you will. They've set their own individual goals. They've accomplished them, but they are limited in accomplishing like what the fuck the next set is, or even identifying what they are.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the time you get a coach?
I think from the get-go is the time to get a coach.
I would agree fully.
Because you also have to be coached differently throughout your journey.
There we go.
So
Why
like
is that?
with some people, I'm very direct that are newer, most of the time newer with me. I'm very direct, and it's like it's a little bit more totalitarian. It's like, hey, this is the way or the highway type situation. And there's other people who I've been with long enough that we've built enough rapport and trust with each other that we can discuss things a little bit more. And it's more of like a collaborative effort than it's like, no, you need to be fucking doing this because this is what you need to do to be great. Eventually, that will get to the point where we can have a conversation about things and try and figure out what the best route of attack is for somebody
There
on a
you go.
workout.
Yeah, I mean, I coach everyone differently. I don't coach all of my athletes the same.
What? Okay, so you both had an overlap of coaching everyone differently. Why?
No,
Everybody's different.
your DNA is the same as mine.
So that's
And
that's
but
important
a
for what-
coach can't coach everyone the same. If they do, they're not a good coach.
There we go. You have to be able to adapt. So now, when it comes to, we can talk about the adaptability of a coach, and honestly, we're going to on the next episode of the series.
Yeah.
But keeping just where we're at, the whole, the main point, or the title of this, or whatever the hell we call it, is like coach or self-sufficient ?
Mhm.
The successful athlete. An athlete can go about it to a certain degree, but they have to have a coach.
They don't have to,
They
but
don't
a
have to,
coach will
okay.
help.
The coach will help.
Yeah.
So, Griffin,
Mm-hmm.
if one of those homies that you messaged would have reached back out to you and said, "All right, let's do this thing," what trajectory would your fitness career have gone? Do you think, in your opinion?
Well, I don't know because it could have gone better or worse. I don't know.
So you
Or
had
stagnant.
well-
Who knows?
Mm.
So the reason I asked that question is because knowing you, your circle is very, very tight.
Right, but that was me. I don't ask for a lot of help.
Right. It's impossible to get you to delegate anything.
No, not
Yes,
at
it
all.
is.
It's
Yes,
not
yes, it is.
impossible.
Yes, it is.
Literally not worth getting here. Delegated out. We've delegated all these tasks out. I don't do them all. No, like it was really me trying to ask, and I don't know, and I was like, it's worth the shot to find out, because at this point I realized like if my ceiling is what it is.
You said my favorite 3 words. I guess one's a letter, technically. I don't know. In my opinion, it's imperative for an athlete to have that as at their forefront, because that.
Or imperative for everybody.
Well, of course, right? Yes, imperative for everybody. We're talking about athlete
Yeah.
on this
yeah.
episode. So, I mean, I say that because I'm gonna not be devil's advocate. I'm gonna be very direct. I think all athletes do need a coach, because athletes don't know. Because of the ceiling, they can't see past the ceiling without the guidance required by a coach.
Yeah. Well, there's that, and then there's also like an athlete lives a life cycle of a sport one time. A coach
Yeah.
lives it 4, maybe 5
Until we're
times
dead, man.
inside of their lifetime, right? So they're like hands down, they're just gonna have more experience than an athlete will, like, period.
I think that's perfectly said.
So
yes.
like, so they're obviously gonna have lessons for you to learn as an athlete, that you're not. It's going to take you time to understand, and you can accelerate your learning curve and your ability curve exponentially through listening or having a coach.
I would argue that along those lines, you said, I'm just going to repeat it here to make sure I understood it correctly. An athlete's going to have a learning curve,
Mm-hmm.
and it takes time for that learning curve to happen,
Mm-hmm.
to occur. I would argue that stressors are the big one that
Well,
force that learning curve to be low at first, and then once they learn through guidance of the coach, most times, some degree, like you have the ability to be self-reflective. The people that don't, the coach can guide them, can guide the athlete to develop the tools to have a degree of introspect,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then the learning curve goes up really high. There's also movement mechanics, right? Why the fuck don't I understand this movement, that movement? Well, the Coach's Eye, literally an app called Coach's Eye back in the day,
Mm-hmm.
that showcases and can give you, well, the app can't, but the coach can give you direct
Mm-hmm.
feedback, right? And you do it all the time with Olympic weightlifting. You do it all the time with execution on workouts on Saturdays. Just one simple example for both of you there. And then if an athlete doesn't have that, they will never shatter the threshold of the ceiling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what's he?
It was to get a little small discussion if you guys had anything to disagree with on that.
Well, I think when you first start out a sport, you have an exponential learning curve. Like it goes faster, but at some point in time, you're going to hit roadblocks, and the coach can help you through those roadblocks. I think in our case, in our community, it's a little bit more mindset oriented right now than it is movement. And we're like, our community is going to have a life cycle, and eventually it'll be more movement based than it will be.
We will have to adjust to it.
But in our case, it's a little bit more mindset oriented right now. And so we're helping people. Like, you got to think about, like, if an athlete is set to their own devices to figure out why they aren't mentally capable or why they aren't capable of achieving the next step, and it's their mindset that's preventing them from getting there, and no one's telling them, like, you got to stop talking like that, you got to stop thinking like that, these are the ways that you should be thinking, and like go use these tools to help develop that mindset. It's going to take them a fuckload of time, if not never, to actually develop the right mindset and tools for that mindset to get to their goal.
Fair enough. It's anything on your end on that?
No.
Okay.
Said it exactly the way it needed to be said.
So, the successful athlete, coach or self-sufficient?
Both.
Both.
You need to be an individual, like Griffin's been saying. You need to be an individual athlete. You need to do your job. You need to get your shit together, and you need to do your job. You need to train hard. No one's going to train hard for you. You need to make the decision to compete hard as well, because no one is going to make that decision for you. You need to make the decision that you're going to win. The coach can help you develop tools and help you develop all that stuff and get you to your best possible self.
Hell yeah. Anything on your end?
Nope.
Fair enough. That was it with what I wanted to talk about in that regard for this first episode. The next episode, for a look into the future, we're going to be talking about the athlete self-talk and the impact of coaching behaviors.
Cool.
Hell yeah.
Be on the lookout.
Fuck yeah.
We'll catch you guys next time. Thanks for coming on, guys.
Peace.